Marcus Webb opened his eyes to complete darkness. His breath came in short, painful gasps as ice crystals formed on his visor. The research station around him was nothing but twisted metal and shattered glass. He had been working in the geology lab when the tremor hit. The entire structure had collapsed in seconds, and everyone else had evacuated in the emergency shuttle 30 minutes before it happened. Everyone except him. The communication system was dead. His suit was damaged. His oxygen tank showed a blinking red light that meant maybe an hour remained. Marcus knew what that meant. He was going to die on Zexter 9, alone in the frozen darkness, and nobody on Earth would ever know what happened to him. He pulled himself through the rubble, not sure why he was bothering. The surface temperature outside was minus 220 degrees Celsius. His suit could only handle minus 180. He would freeze before the oxygen ran out, which seemed almost merciful compared to the alternative. As he dragged himself toward what remained of the exit airlock, a sound stopped him. It was not mechanical. It was not the wind, because there was no wind on this dead world. It was something else, something alive. A figure appeared through the swirling snow and ice. At first, Marcus thought it was another team member, but as it drew closer, his mind struggled to process what his eyes were seeing. The creature was impossibly tall, at least 8 feet, with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It moved with perfect grace across terrain that should have been impassable. 4 eyes arranged in a perfect square on its face focused on Marcus with an intensity that made his heart race. The being wore no suit, no protection against the killing cold. It simply existed in this nightmare landscape as if born to it. Marcus tried to move backward, but his damaged suit would not respond. Fear flooded through him, more intense than any he had ever felt. He was about to die anyway, but not like this, not at the hands of something from his deepest nightmares. The creature stopped a few meters away and made a sound, a series of harmonic tones that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. When it spoke again, the words came through Marcus's helmet speakers in English, but in English with an accent that seemed to shift between vowels and consonants in ways that human mouths could not produce. I am Astra of the Thylos. Your life ends here on this world, human. I have come to change that outcome. The creature knelt down, its movements fluid and controlled. My sensors detected the crash of your habitat structure. I have been observing your species from orbit for many cycles. You interest me. Marcus wanted to respond, but his voice would not work. His mind was spinning, unable to accept what was happening. Was he hallucinating from oxygen deprivation? Was this some kind of dream as his brain shut down? Astra extended what could only be called a hand, though it had more fingers than any human hand, each one ending in a crystalline point that gleamed in the starlight. Come with me, human. I offer you survival. My vessel is hidden within the mountain complex 2 kilometers from your location. We must move quickly. Your suit integrity is failing. Marcus stared at that offered hand. Everything in him wanted to refuse, to choose the familiar death rather than venture into the unknown with this alien being. But survival instinct overrode caution. He took the hand. Astra's skin was cold, so cold it burned, but not in a painful way. It felt like touching a surface that had been frozen since the beginning of time itself. She pulled him up as if he weighed nothing. The journey to her vessel took only minutes, yet it felt like hours. Astra moved across the impossible terrain with purpose while Marcus struggled to keep pace. His suit was failing faster now. The heating element had shut down. His fingers were numb. The stars above seemed to mock him with their distant beauty. Then they reached a mountain face that seemed solid and impenetrable. But Astra placed her hand against the rock and a section simply dissolved, revealing a hidden doorway. Beyond it lay light and warmth and the promise of continued existence. The interior of the Thylos vessel was unlike anything Marcus had imagined. The walls seemed to be made of a substance that was not quite metal and not quite crystal. They glowed with a soft luminescence that made everything visible yet somehow dreamlike. Astra led him to a chamber where she removed his damaged suit with surprising gentleness. Marcus expected the cold to kill him immediately, but instead he felt only a comfortable coolness. He realized then that the entire interior of the ship was temperature-controlled to match Zextor 9's atmosphere. That should have been impossible. Nothing could survive in those conditions without protection. Yet as he stood there naked except for his underwear, he found he could breathe. He could move. He could live. How is this possible? Marcus asked. His voice sounded strange, unfamiliar, like he was hearing it through water. Astra was preparing something at a console that seemed to respond to her thoughts alone. She did not touch anything. She simply gestured and things changed, shifted, reformed. My civilization has understood biology and physics in ways your kind has not yet achieved. We can modify atmosphere, adjust gravity, and alter the very air you breathe to sustain your fragile human form. It is simple engineering to us, though I understand it seems miraculous to you. She gestured to a chamber filled with glowing liquid that pulsed with inner light. Enter this healing pool. Your injuries are severe. Your internal organs have sustained damage. Your skeleton has fractures. You are lucky to be alive at all. The pool will repair what your body cannot. Marcus hesitated for only a moment before stepping into the liquid. It was warm and gentle, and the moment he submerged himself completely, a sensation like being born again washed over him. Colors exploded behind his eyes. He felt his ribs realigning, felt fractured bones knitting together, felt cuts and bruises fading away. He emerged an hour later feeling more alive than he had ever felt in his entire life. Astra was waiting with clothing that fit his frame perfectly. "How long have you been watching us?" Marcus asked as he dressed. "Watching humanity?" Astra's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, and he realized this was how her kind expressed thought. "For 273 of your years, since you first split the atom and released nuclear energy into your atmosphere, my civilization was alerted by the radiation signatures. We came to observe. We wanted to understand if you were a threat to the greater galactic community. The debate among our people has been ongoing ever since. Some believe you should be destroyed before you become dangerous. Others believe you have potential for peace. I have come to a different conclusion than either of these positions. I believe you are worth saving, Marcus Webb, though I do not fully understand why I believe this yet." Marcus felt the weight of her words. "You know my name." Astra gestured, and a holographic display showed his file, his photograph, his complete life history. "I know everything about you. I have studied your personnel records, your medical history, your psychological profiles. You are a geologist, trained in mineralogy, structural analysis, and planetary formation. You are also a person who sent money to earthquake relief organizations, a person who refused to work on weapons development despite the higher salary, a person who chose to explore rather than to exploit. These qualities make you valuable to me, more valuable than your commanders on your ship realize." Marcus understood then that his life had been spared not by chance but by design. Astra had chosen to save him. Astra had plans for him, and whether those plans would be salvation or doom, he was too grateful to be alive to refuse. Days turned into weeks on the Thylos vessel. Marcus began to understand that time worked differently here. The ship existed partially outside normal space-time, something Astra called a phase shift dimension. What seemed like hours to his perception could translate to days in real space. She used this advantage to teach him everything his species needed to know about the galaxy, beyond their small blue world. Marcus spent his time learning the Thylos language, a complex system of harmonic sounds combined with visual light patterns that communicated meaning in ways English never could. Astra was his only instructor, his only companion. The rest of the Thylos crew existed somewhere else on the massive vessel. Marcus rarely saw them, though he sometimes felt their presence like shadows at the edge of perception. He wondered if they approved of her keeping him alive. He wondered what the Thylos Council would think about her plans, because Marcus was increasingly certain that Astra had plans far beyond simple rescue and education. One day, as they stood in the observation chamber looking down at Zexter 9's icy surface, Marcus finally asked the question that had been building in his mind since the moment Astra had saved him. "Why me? There were other people on that station. Why didn't you save them too?" Astra was silent for a long moment, her 4 eyes reflecting the planet's dim light. When she finally spoke, her words were careful and measured. "Because I did not believe they would understand what I am trying to show you. They would fear me more than they would appreciate the knowledge I offer. You, Marcus Webb, you have spent your entire life studying the ground beneath your feet, trying to understand the history written in stone and mineral. You understand that nothing remains static. Everything changes. Everything evolves. Your kind has mostly forgotten this. Your military leaders, your politicians, they think in terms of conquest and control. They do not think in terms of adaptation and growth. You are different. You understand that survival comes not from domination, but from understanding. This is why you live." Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settle onto his shoulders. "What do you want from me, Astra? I don't believe this is simply about education or kindness. You didn't rescue me out of mercy. You want something. Astra turned to face him fully, and for the first time Marcus saw something he had not seen before in her alien features. It looked almost like sadness, or perhaps something deeper, something humans might call longing. I want my people to understand that humanity deserves to join the greater galactic community. I want them to see that you are not merely a violent, primitive species destined for self-destruction. I want them to understand what I understand, that within your violence and chaos there exists something beautiful and worthy of preservation. But my people will not listen to words alone. They will require proof. They will require a human who can speak for his kind, a human who understands both worlds. You will be that bridge, Marcus. You will return to Earth and explain to your leaders what I am offering. You will convince them that there is another path beyond isolation and fear. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. They won't believe me. I've been gone for months. They probably think I'm dead. They'll think I'm insane if I return with stories about aliens and galactic councils. Astra reached out and placed one of her crystalline-tipped fingers gently against his chest, over his heart. Then I will give you proof that cannot be denied. I will return with you to Earth. I will demonstrate our technology. I will present myself to your world leaders as a representative of the Thylos civilization. And together, we will change the course of human history. The implications of what she was saying began to crystallize in Marcus's mind. You'll come back with me? To Earth, they'll panic. They'll see you as an invasion threat. Militaries will mobilize. There could be war. Astra's expression shifted into something that might have been the Thylos equivalent of a smile. Yes, there could be war. Your kind is quick to resort to violence when faced with the unknown. But I am gambling that you will be more persuasive than their fear. I am gambling that you will represent to them what I see in you. A better possibility. A future beyond conflict. Your leaders know you, Marcus. They trained you. They trusted you enough to send you to another planet. That trust can be transferred to me through you. Over the next weeks, Astra prepared Marcus for his return. She taught him about the Thylos civilization, about the galactic council that governed the thousands of species that existed peacefully throughout the galaxy. She showed him recordings of worlds that had reached the same technological precipice that humanity now occupied. She showed him which ones had chosen peace and evolved into something magnificent, and which ones had chosen war and destroyed themselves. Earth could follow either path, and the choice would be made in the coming weeks. When the day finally came to depart Zexter 9, Marcus stood on the bridge of the Thylos vessel and watched as the planet grew smaller beneath them. He had arrived as a corpse waiting to happen. He was leaving as something new, something that had never existed before. He was a human who had learned to think in ways his own kind had not yet discovered. He was a bridge between worlds, and everything depended on whether he could make his own people understand what stood on the other side of that bridge. As they traveled through the phase shift dimension toward Earth, Astra stood beside him, her alien form a constant reminder of how much had changed in such a short time. She had taken an enormous risk believing in him, believing in his species. Now it was his turn to take a risk. He had to convince the powers on Earth that this strange alien being meant no harm. He had to make his world understand that humanity's future depended on acceptance of something they had always feared. It was the most important mission of his life, and he had no guarantee of success. The sensors on Earth's Deep Space Observatory detected the Thylos vessel long before it entered the solar system. Dr. Lisa Palmer was working the late shift when her instruments began screaming alerts. She had been studying unusual gravitational signatures in the Zexter sector for months, ever since the exploration mission had returned without Captain Webb. His death had been officially recorded and filed away. Everyone on Earth had moved on with their lives, but Lisa had not. She kept studying the region where he had disappeared, looking for answers that never came. When the massive ship appeared, Lisa's first instinct was to call for help. She reached for the emergency communication system, her hands shaking as she input the protocol for a planetary threat alert. Within minutes, her call had reached every military command center, every government agency, and every news organization on Earth. The world that had been peacefully going about its day suddenly found itself facing an unknown threat from the STARS. Commander Catherine Rodriguez was in her apartment reviewing personnel files when the alert came through. She had been drinking coffee and trying not to think about Marcus Webb, but his ghost haunted every moment of her life. She had made the decision to leave him behind, And though she had been cleared of wrongdoing by official inquiry, the weight of that choice never left her shoulders. Now, as she watched the television screen showing the approach of an alien vessel the size of a mountain, Catherine felt her heart stop in her chest. The United Nations Security Council convened within an hour. Military commanders argued for immediate defensive action. Scientists urged caution and observation. Politicians demanded clarity on whether this was an invasion or a first contact scenario. Missiles were armed. Fleets mobilized. The entire planet held its breath as humanity faced the moment it had both feared and anticipated since the first space telescope had looked up at the stars. Then a message came. It was broadcast on every frequency, every channel, in every language spoken on Earth simultaneously. The voice was human, distinctly human, speaking English with a slight accent that was unmistakably American. Commander Rodriguez heard that voice and stood up from her chair. She knew that voice. She had heard it 1,000 times in conversations, in status reports, in the casual banter of space exploration. It was Marcus Webb. This is Captain Marcus Webb of the Earth Exploration Vessel. I am speaking to you from the Thylos Scientific Research Vessel. I am alive, I am well, and I have come with a message of tremendous importance for all humanity. The message continued, explaining what had happened on Zexter 9, how he had been rescued, how he had learned about the greater galactic community, and how the Thylos civilization was offering humanity a choice: peace or isolation, growth or stagnation, a future with friends among the stars or a lonely path that would eventually lead to self-destruction. The world reacted with chaos. Some celebrated the news that Marcus Webb was alive. Others panicked that an alien vessel was approaching Earth. Religious leaders debated whether this was divine intervention or demonic intrusion. Scientists demanded proof of what Marcus was claiming. Military leaders wanted to intercept the vessel before it could get too close to Earth's defensive perimeter. Commander Rodriguez moved quickly through the chaos. She had authority as the commanding officer of the mission that had left Marcus behind. She had credibility because she had known him, worked with him, and deeply regretted the decision to abandon him. She went to the United Nations Emergency Command Center and demanded to speak directly with Marcus on a secure line. When his face appeared on the screen, Catherine felt tears streaming down her cheeks. He looked exactly as she remembered, except for something different in his eyes. They held a depth of understanding that went beyond human experience. She could see in his gaze that he had been changed by what he had learned, by what he had seen. He was no longer entirely the man she had known. Marcus, I need to know the truth. Is this real? Are these aliens a threat? Catherine's voice was steady despite the turmoil inside her. Marcus nodded slowly. I understand why you're afraid, Commander. I was terrified when Astra first found me. But I'm telling you with complete certainty that they are not a threat. They are offering us something we've never had before. A chance to grow beyond what we are. A chance to take our place among the intelligent species of the galaxy. But this has to be a choice. It has to be made freely by the people of Earth. Astra, Catherine asked. Is that the name of your alien companion? Marcus hesitated for just a moment. Yes, she is the one who rescued me. She is the one who has taught me everything I know about what exists beyond our planet. She is the reason I can stand here and tell you that we don't have to be afraid anymore. She is on the vessel, and she wants to meet with your world leaders. The decision was made within the hour. The Thylos vessel would be allowed to approach, but only to a point within 500 kilometers of Earth. A delegation of world leaders, military commanders, and scientists would travel to a neutral location to meet with Astra. It was the most important diplomatic mission in human history, and everyone involved understood the stakes. Catherine Rodriguez was chosen to lead the human delegation, partly because she had known Marcus, partly because she was respected as a decisive leader, and partly because her country held significant military and political power on the world stage. As she prepared to leave Earth aboard a shuttle that would take her to the meeting point, she found herself thinking about fate and second chances. She had thought Marcus Webb was dead. She had believed she would carry that guilt forever. Now he was offering her an unexpected gift, the chance to help guide her species into a new future. The shuttle approached the massive Thylos vessel, and Catherine found herself staring up at a structure that seemed to defy the laws of engineering. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, a monument to a civilization that understood things humanity was only beginning to comprehend. As the airlock opened and she stepped into the alien ship for the first time, Catherine Rodriguez felt her entire world shift. There would be no going back from this moment. Whatever happened in the next hours would determine the future of the human race. The conference chamber aboard the Thylos vessel was designed to make humans comfortable, though it was clear the design was an afterthought. The walls curved in gentle arcs and the lighting was warm and familiar. Marcus Webb stood beside Astra as the human delegation entered. Catherine Rodriguez led the group, followed by world leaders from every major continent, military commanders, and scientific advisors. They moved cautiously, their eyes darting around the chamber as if expecting danger at any moment. Astra waited calmly at the far end of the chamber. Her alien form seemed to fill the space, though Marcus knew this was partly psychological effect. She was not significantly taller than a human male, just taller. What made her seem to fill the chamber was the confidence she projected, the sense that she was in complete control of every situation around her. She had instructed Marcus on how humans read confidence, and she had spent weeks practicing how to present herself in ways that would not trigger human fear responses. When Catherine saw Marcus, her eyes widened. She had seen him on the video feed, but seeing him in person was entirely different. He was alive. He was healthy. He was standing beside an alien being as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Catherine approached Marcus slowly, and when she was close enough, she embraced him. For a moment, Marcus felt the full weight of all the months she had spent thinking him dead, all the guilt she had carried for leaving him behind. "You came back," she whispered. "You actually came back." Marcus held her for a moment longer, then gently pulled away. "I came back with a message, Commander. A message that everything we thought we knew about the universe is wrong and right. It depends on how you look at it." He gestured toward Astra. "I want to introduce you to Astra of the Thylos civilization. She saved my life. She has educated me. And she has given me hope for humanity's future." Astra made a gesture and holographic displays lit up around the chamber. They showed images of dozens of alien civilizations, some that looked almost human, others that were radically different in form. They showed thriving cities on planets that orbited distant stars. They showed technology that made human science look like primitive cave paintings. But most importantly, they showed peace, cooperation, understanding. "I am Astra," she began, her voice now carefully modulated to match human vocal patterns as closely as possible. "I have come to present an offer from the Thylos civilization and the greater Galactic Council to your species. For thousands of years, humanity has been isolated. This isolation was not accidental. It was a deliberate choice made by my civilization and others. We observed your kind and saw a species caught between violence and wisdom. We saw potential for both great achievement and great destruction. We decided to quarantine you until you reached a level of maturity that would allow you to be safe neighbors in a galaxy full of intelligent life." One of the military commanders stood up angrily. "You kept us imprisoned? You trapped us on our own planet? This is unacceptable. This is an act of war." Astra's four eyes blinked in sequence, and Marcus realized she was making what the Thylos called a recognition pattern. It meant she was acknowledging the speaker's position without agreeing with it. "I understand your anger. Your species values freedom above most things. Being prevented from exploring your own star system is a violation of that value. This is acknowledged. However, consider what would have happened if we had not imposed the quarantine. Your nuclear weapons would have expanded into space weapons. Your military-industrial complex would have sought to conquer neighboring planets. You would have discovered other species, and those encounters would have likely led to conflict. The quarantine was imposed to protect you as much as to protect others from you." Catherine Rodriguez held up her hand, and the angry commander fell silent. She had natural authority, and everyone in the room responded to it. "Why are you lifting the quarantine now?" "What has changed?" Astra gestured toward Marcus. "This human represents the change. Captain Webb exists at the intersection of two realities. He has lived under the restrictions of his isolation, and he has experienced the freedom of knowing the greater universe. He has studied your species, and I have studied him. I have come to believe that humanity has reached a point of maturity where it can take its place among the stars without threatening the peace of the galaxy. I have advocated for this position with the greater Galactic Council. They have agreed to allow an experimental period of contact. If your species can prove that you can coexist peacefully with other civilizations, the quarantine will be lifted permanently. If you cannot, The quarantine will be reimposed, but this time with permanent banishment from all interstellar exploration. The stakes were clear. Earth had been given an ultimatum, though it was a fair one. Prove that humanity could be trusted, or be locked away forever. Catherine looked at Marcus. What exactly would accepting this offer entail? What changes would Earth have to make? Marcus took a step forward. Your nuclear weapons would have to be dismantled. All of them. The military budgets spent on weapons would have to be redirected toward peaceful purposes. You would receive Thylos technology for energy production, medical advancement, and environmental restoration. Within a century, your world could be transformed. Hunger could be eliminated. Disease could be cured. The effects of climate change could be reversed. All the suffering that has plagued your species could be ended. But you would have to give up the idea of using violence to solve your problems. A scientist in the delegation raised her hand.
How do we know you're not lying?
How do we know this technology won't be used to control us? Astra seemed to consider the question carefully. You don't know. Trust is a risk that all species must take when they open themselves to the unknown. However, I can offer you this. I will remain on Earth as a permanent ambassador. I will be vulnerable to your people, subject to your laws, living among you as proof of my civilization's good intentions. If we betray you, I will be a hostage to that betrayal. The chamber fell silent. Astra was offering something profound. She was offering herself as collateral, as evidence of good faith. Catherine Rodriguez understood the weight of that gesture. She was a military leader, trained to be suspicious, trained to look for deception, but she was also a human being, and she could recognize when someone was taking a genuine risk for what they believed in. I will recommend to the United Nations that we accept this offer, Catherine said slowly. But there will need to be extensive negotiations. We will need to verify your claims about the technology. We will need guarantees of safety. And we will need time to prepare our world for what this change will mean. Astra's expression shifted into something that might have been satisfaction. Time is something I have. My civilization exists on a different temporal scale than yours. What you consider years, we consider moments. I can wait, but I would ask that the process begin as quickly as possible. Your planet is fragile. The damage your species has done to your own ecosystem accelerates even as we speak. The sooner we begin the restoration process, the sooner your world can be healed. As the meeting continued, Marcus found himself watching the interaction between Astra and the human leaders. She was patient with their fears. She was careful with her words. And underneath all of it, he could sense her commitment to humanity's future. She had gambled everything on the belief that his species was worth saving. Now it was up to the human race to prove that her faith had not been misplaced. 6 months after the first meeting with Astra, the transformation of Earth had begun in earnest. Nuclear weapons facilities were being dismantled under international supervision. Military leaders were transitioning to new roles focused on humanitarian efforts. Astra had delivered on her promises. Advanced medical technology had been introduced, and diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia were being eradicated. Cancer treatments that had been impossible a year ago were now routine procedures. Prosthetics created from Thylos technology allowed people to recover full function after injuries that would have crippled them. Marcus Webb stood in the observation dome of the new United Nations Planetary Council headquarters, watching the Earth below. The facility had been constructed with Thylos assistance and existed in a state of harmony with the planet's ecosystem. Renewable energy flowed from systems that converted solar radiation into usable power with 99% efficiency. The building itself was almost alive, adapting to environmental conditions, healing its own damage. Astra entered the dome silently. She had learned to move in ways that would not startle humans, who seemed to have an exaggerated startle response compared to her own species. She stood beside Marcus and gazed down at the world they had both given so much for. The transition is progressing faster than the Galactic Council anticipated, Astra said. Your species has responded to the opportunity for peace with remarkable speed. I have been studying your psychology, Marcus, and I believe I understand why. Your kind has never really wanted war. You have wanted cooperation and community. War has been imposed upon you by leaders who believed it was necessary. When given a genuine alternative, you have embraced it with enthusiasm that my own people find almost incomprehensible. Marcus smiled. He had grown used to the way Astra spoke, the careful consideration she gave to every word. Over the past months, he had realized that what he had initially perceived as alien coldness was actually profound thoughtfulness. Every choice Astra made had been carefully considered, every action taken with full awareness of its consequences. "My people are grateful," Marcus said. "They see the future now. They see what we can become if we choose cooperation over competition. But I know some are still afraid. They're afraid of becoming dependent on your technology. They're afraid of losing our independence, our uniqueness." "These are valid concerns," Astra acknowledged. "Dependency creates vulnerability. This is why we have chosen to share the knowledge, not merely the technology. Your scientists are being trained in the principles of Thylos engineering. Within a generation, your species will be capable of creating and maintaining the technology yourselves. You will not be dependent. You will be partners." Catherine Rodriguez appeared in the dome carrying files and looking exhausted. She had been working almost constantly since the agreement with the Thylos had been finalized. She nodded respectfully to both Marcus and Astra. "The final nuclear disarmament is scheduled for completion in 3 weeks," she reported. "All nations have complied. The weapons are being dismantled simultaneously to ensure no group develops a strategic advantage. The Thylos technology is making the process much faster and safer than we expected." "How are the people responding?" Astra asked. It was the question she always asked. The data about human compliance mattered less to her than the human feelings behind that compliance. "With relief, mostly," Catherine said. "There's still some resistance from military traditionalists. Some politicians are struggling to define their roles when military spending is being reduced. But overall, people are choosing hope over fear. Children are being born into a world without the threat of nuclear annihilation. Parents are seeing their children have futures that don't involve military service. That's a powerful thing." Over the following weeks, Marcus watched as his world continued to transform. He traveled to different nations, meeting with world leaders, helping them understand the changes and assist their populations in adapting. Astra remained a constant presence, but she increasingly operated in the background, allowing humans to lead the transition process. She was teaching them, gradually transferring authority and responsibility, making sure that humanity's future would be shaped by humans, not by aliens. It was during a state visit to the Indian subcontinent that Marcus had a moment to himself with Astra, in a traditional garden overlooking the Ganges River. The water was flowing more purely now, cleaned by Thylos technology that broke down centuries of accumulated pollution. Forests were growing again in areas that had been stripped bare. The planet was healing itself and humans were learning to be caretakers rather than conquerors. "Do you regret saving me?" Marcus asked. It was a question that had been building in him for weeks. "Your civilization took an enormous risk believing in my species. What if we fail? What if we prove unworthy of your faith?" Astra was quiet for a long moment, her 4 eyes reflecting the setting sun in colors that seemed impossible. When she finally spoke, her voice carried something new. Marcus took a moment to identify it, then realized what it was. It was affection. It was love, rendered in the alien phonetics of the Thylos language, but love nonetheless. "I have lived for 837 of your years," Astra said. "In all that time, I have never encountered a species that fascinated me the way yours does. You are violent and gentle, destructive and creative, selfish and selfless, often all at the same time. Your contradictions are not flaws, Marcus. They are your greatest strength. They allow you to change, to grow, to evolve in ways that more harmonious species cannot. I do not regret saving you. I regret only that I did not find you sooner." Marcus felt something shift inside him. He had known for weeks that his feelings for Astra went beyond gratitude or respect. She was alien, incomprehensible in many ways, yet somehow she understood humanity's potential better than humans themselves. He reached out and took her hand, feeling the cold crystalline surface, the undeniable reality of her alien form. "What happens now?" he asked. "What happens to us? To me and you, I mean. You've given my species a future. What about your future?" Astra turned to face him fully, and for the first time, Marcus saw uncertainty in her alien features. "I have petitioned the Thylos Council for permission to remain on Earth permanently, to abandon my position as temporary ambassador, and become something else. Something new. A being who is neither fully Thylos nor human, but existing between both worlds. I have requested their permission to build a life here, with your kind, with you specifically. My civilization is not accustomed to such choices. We do not feel emotion the way you do. But I have come to understand that what I feel for you transcends my entire civilization's understanding of what is possible. I believe I may have discovered something my people thought impossible. I believe I may be capable of love." The sun set fully as Marcus and Astra stood together in the garden, watching the river flow toward an uncertain future. Below them, humanity was building something new, creating societies based on cooperation rather than conflict. Above them, the stars were no longer distant and forbidden. They were home. They were possibility. They were hope. And standing between those worlds, Marcus Webb and Astra of the Thylos had become something entirely new. A bridge between species, a symbol of what was possible when different beings chose understanding over fear, when they chose connection over isolation, when they chose love in all its forms. The human race had survived its greatest challenge not through weapons or warfare, but through one man's willingness to trust an alien being, and one alien's willingness to believe in humanity's potential. And now, as the two stood together watching the world transform, they understood that the greatest journey had only just begun. A journey between worlds, written in the language of hope and spoken by creatures who had learned to see past their differences and embrace their shared future.